Welcome back to the Essentially You podcast, Dr. Carrie Jones. Oh, it's so good to see you.
Likewise, I am so excited when you reached out. We're like, we have to talk. I'm like, we have to talk. I can't wait.
We have to talk. We got to talk. And that was it. You were posting. I mean, obviously, I follow you on Instagram. You are phenomenal and amazing. And I'm just like, yes, 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 yes. Yes. How many yeses can I do here? Like how many hearts? And I'm like, shout it from the rooftop. We need more of us doing that. And one of the things that I really got excited about that you were talking about recently was the FDA approved mini pill called the Opill. And I don't even know if everyone knows that there is an FDA approved Opill that is now you can get it without a prescription. And I'm not sure if it's even hit all the drugstores yet.
Not yet. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
But I know that there are a lot of people who are hearing about this and want to know more about it. And not only, so kind of a little bit of a caveat here is I think it's safe to say that you and I both agree that during a time where a lot of reproductive rights are being taken away, we do want women to be empowered to claim their reproductive health. And so there are some positives. Obviously, there's always nuances, but when it comes to birth control, I think that there is a level of a lack of informed consent. And there's been marketing. I mean, you remember when we were in high school and it could fix the birth control pill could fix everything.
Everything.
Remember hair?
Oh, everything.
Your acne, skin. I mean, all of it, right? You had a bad boyfriend, it could fix that. It promised us the world. I remember in the 1990s, early 2000s. And so I just want to kind of get your take on kind of what was your first reaction when you saw that the FDA released this no prescription mini pill?
It was good and bad. Good because I 100% agree with you. I'm a very pro-choice type of person when it comes to reproductive rights, like the birth control pill. I want women to have access to it. The like, oh gosh part was the Opill is a little more challenging. It's more high maintenance compared to your regular pill. And I think maybe not your listeners, because you go really well into it, but some people don't even realize there's different kinds of pills. So there's an estrogen progestin combination. We call it the combo pill. And then we have the mini pill, which is only a progestin. A progestin is, of course, a synthetic fake progesterone. And when you only have one half of the duo, you only have that progestin, we call it the mini pill, but it's really time sensitive. Like you have to be real specific on the time of day that you take it. If you miss it by a few hours, if you normally take it in the morning, but you've been traveling, time zone changes, so you took it at night, you can get irregular bleeding. You lose the birth control parts of it, and it can actually bring on spotting or your period or something like that. So I was glad on the one hand to give the choice back to women who need this for whatever reason. But I was also like, dang, it is a high maintenance pill. Like if you don't have that education, if that pharmacist doesn't say, hey, look, you've got to be diligent on how you take it, and here are the side effects you have to watch out for. If that doesn't happen, if they just hand them a sheet, or if you've ever gone to a pharmacy, and you get that huge printout that they sort of stuff in your bag, and you're like, I'm never going to read this.
Massive printout.
Right. It's like, and
with small letters.
Yeah, you're like, I'm never reading this. But I'm hoping pharmacists at least hit the high point, or people are listening to your podcast and go, all right, let's break this down. Got it. I know I need to take it at the same time every day. And then, how are the side effects different given that it's progestin only versus a combo pill?
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. But also the other thing that's really interesting about the mini pill is it inconsistently suppresses ovulation. About 65% of the time, it is going to suppress ovulation. I know the combination pill very much does.
Yeah.
It pretty much suppress ovulation. Almost all any type of birth control pill or even IUD on the market is going to suppress ovulation most of the time.
Yeah.
So I always lean on the side of it's most likely going to. And it's probably, and if it doesn't ultimately, like, let's say it doesn't suppress ovulation, it's not cut and dry. It may suppress some of the time, and that's a concern, when it comes to birth control. If
you're on it for birth control,
if you're on it for birth control, that's exactly what you want. But if you're on it for all the other reasons why, doctors put women on birth control, and we're going to talk about that today as well. Note that, ovulation is the main event. And us lacking that ovulatory cycle really is a detriment to our health. especially if we're just using it as a symptom management tool.
Right. Exactly. And they even say, I was on the FDA website again this morning, pulling up their white paper, and, you know, they say, we realize, and they're like FAQ sheet, we realize with the Opill that it is that inconsistent, leans on the it's going to suppress ovulation, so leans on the, like, it's pretty good at preventing pregnancy, which is great, that's what it's designed for. But in some women, and you know, there's questions around things like grapefruit, for example. Grapefruit speeds up how you process pills. So if you're drinking grapefruit juice or something, then, you know, if you're on a cleanse, let's say you've decided to do some big heavy detoxification, you're going to speed up how fast you process this birth control pill. And this one in particular is going to get flushed out pretty quick. It's just progestin, and you already don't have close to 100% ovulation protection or prevention. So it, you know, it could go out. I've even read some things about adiposity, you know, depending on how much weight you carry, could that affect if you have more adiposity on you? Should you have maybe a higher dose? We kind of know that with the birth control pills, somebody who has more weight to them, we may not start them on the lowest combination pill because of the body mass and what the pill needs to do to the brain to suppress everything down. Not everybody falls in that category, but if you don't know and you go to your pharmacy and you're like, I'm just going to pick up the Opill real quick and get protection because that's what I need. I just want everyone educated so they know the signs to look for. They know, like, it may not suppress ovulation all the time. If you're doing some big heavy detox, probably is not going to help you much with protection either. You know, just some of these things I'm hoping make it into the pharmacy FAQ that they hand out. Yeah.
I think maybe over time they will. And I'm so grateful that we're talking about this because I just, you know, the stat usually around a mini pill is, you know, in terms of women getting pregnant, it's about 13 to 15% of women within the first year of taking a mini pill, because you do have to be that exact.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be that exact all the time. Like you mentioned, travel, you know, hopping time zones, you know, that can get a little complicated. And that's why often the mini pill isn't always recommended for contraception. It's often used really for hormone issues. And what I usually see it for is women that are breastfeeding, women who struggle with the combination pill, that they need something like a little bit less intense. I mean, I think the mini pill, I was wondering if the reason why it was FDA approved over the counter was that it has less, I mean, I think some could argue that it has less side effects than a combination pill.
Especially like heart risk. I was looking up stroke risk and the type of progestin that's in there. It's called norgestrel. And so a combination pill does, of course, have, you know, heart risk, stroke risk, whereas the progestin, only the norgestrel, does not seem to have that. And so that's one of the big side effects we have to watch out for in women who take birth control. Therefore, to make something over the counter, we've got to minimize that risk as much as possible. So they were like, let's do progestin only.
Yeah. Well, and then also even women with autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's or lupus or endo or high blood pressure, or like I said, a history of blood clots and migraines.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a migraine. I've had hundreds of migraines since I've been pregnant. And I've had clusters. The last cluster of migraines I had actually landed me in the ER with my concussion. I had 12 days of migraines from June into July. And ultimately it got so scary that we were like, we should go get a CT scan to see what's going on. And so for someone like myself and so many women who are having well, obviously mine were concussion driven and hormone driven. My migraines have lots of flavors. But I can guarantee that a migraines it's going to often occur for me about the day before or the day of my period as well. And that is a red flag for, you know, being really mindful about being on the combination pill, you know, where we've got estrogen and synthetic estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I have seen migraine with aura. So for those who don't know, aura is when you get some sort of sensation that, you know, your migraine is coming, as opposed to, oh geez, I've got a headache, and it turns into a migraine. So it's either like smell, hearing, vision, tunnel vision,
or
all the above, right? Or all the above. And then you can't figure it out. And then your migraine comes. That's migraine with aura. And so I did read, they do have that on the sheet. Migraine with aura is still something they're going to warn women about if they go on the Opill, just like with the combination pill.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, but I'm glad we're bringing that up as well, because I think a lot of women don't realize that that is a contraindication, migraine with aura, for being on Honestly, I would steer, I personally, my own personal N of one experiment, I would not go on birth control pills. One, I've never done well on them. I was always, it was just always a bad combination, me and birth control pills, but particularly because of my migraines, and they always have aura with them, and that I had preeclampsia during my pregnancy. That's a no-go for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the other things I want to talk a little bit about are the side effects of the mini pill. Would you like to share some of them, or
Yeah.
do you want me to?
Yeah, so we can summarize some of the things we've already said. So
Yeah.
again, just even if you take it perfectly every single day, just because it is a progestin only, you still have the chance for breakthrough bleeding or full on getting your period sooner. You're more higher at risk if you do miss a day or miss by a couple hours or miss because of time zone change. So in that
So
case, if you are
pregnancy is a side effect.
pregnancy is a side effect. I was just going to say, if this is you, and there are other mini pills out there. There are women listening right now who are on the mini pill. It's just maybe not the Opill, it's just something else. You do, and if you're using the mini pill as a pregnancy prevention, you will have to use some sort of barrier blockage so that pregnancy doesn't become one of the side effects. But very similar to the combination pill, mood changes, GI changes, libido changes for the worse.
Depression.
I was going to say depression, anxiety, which falls under mood. Again, skin. So the norgestrel in the Opill is mildly androgenic. So it can kind of sort of maybe mildly bind to your androgen receptors. Those are like your testosterone receptors. So some women maybe have had worse acne with a birth control pill, or felt that they were maybe getting a body shape that was more, let's say, masculine, more androgenic is what we call it. And because it stimulates those more hair loss, male and female pattern baldness, hair growth in places we don't want, because it is mildly androgenic. And I've absolutely had women say, like, what the heck, I went on the pill to avoid these things and actually got these things. And that it's a second generation progestin that's in it, the norgestrel. And while it does bind to progesterone receptors, it mildly binds to androgen as well. Vision changes are one that we do have to watch also in the combination pill. Like I said earlier, the stroke risk, thankfully, according to the FDA sheet, is not a concern that we need to worry about. However, I never say never, never say never. Don't be the N of one. So if you do notice anything with your blood pressure, if you do notice anything with clotting, with, pain or swelling, right? Swelling,
heat
fingers, swelling ankles, swelling limbs, something swelling, let somebody know, because we don't want you to be a risk factor there.
Also,
and then
potentially,
it's not protective against sexually transmitted infections. So while it's not a side effect that you could develop, you could of course acquire one. So you do have to still use barrier protection to prevent STIs.
and we're talking condoms, y'all, in case you're wondering.
Yes. Yeah, in case you're wondering, or something.
Someone asked me a while back, so I was talking about, the risk of birth control in terms of, treating symptoms versus even just contraception. And someone's like, well, what do you use? What do you do?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's called condoms. It's
a condom.
It's
What's interesting, I mean, this, but I was in my residency, and then I worked at a number of what we call community clinics here in Portland. And sometimes, somebody would get diagnosed with something and they were like, how did I get this? And some of, their contact sport. So some things like HPV or herpes, it's a contact sport as opposed to a fluid exchange.
Right.
And so even just understanding that, being mindful of getting tested, making sure if you have your partner's tested or can prove that they've been tested, use condoms, that all of that is just going to help prevent sexually transmitted infections.
And then the other two things I'm always looking out for is nausea, potentially ovarian cysts. I think those, and breast tenderness.
Nausea is a big one. Breast tenderness, definitely. I forgot that one. Yes.
Yeah, if they're feeling hard and lumpy and uncomfortable, I mean, what it feels like when you're feeling off, and also nutrient deficiencies, which you won't necessarily notice. You may notice that in fatigue, or maybe it's brain fog. Like that's where I find, you're not getting enough of your B vitamins, your magnesium, your selenium, your iron, like those where you'll start to notice maybe a lack of energy, or your brain is just not firing the way that it used to. It's slightly different than feeling moody or anxious or depressed. You're just like, oh, why do I not have the mental bandwidth that I used to have?
In
And I,
the combination pills, in fact, I was talking to a pharmacist the other day, and in a combination pill, it depletes basically a multivitamin's worth of nutrients in your body. And I was asking this pharmacist, why don't you automatically recommend a good quality multi with birth control? And they were like, I know we should. We don't talk about it enough. Hopefully the person who prescribes the birth control will do it for them, says something, suggests it. But they're like, no, it's well known in the pharmacy world that the combination birth control. So even though this is a progestin only, I would still be, hesitant to give you nothing. I'd be like, you know what? Let's cover our bases and get you on a good quality multivitamin while you're on it. Let's try to reduce the risk of some of these things.
yeah, I mean, living life alone day to day with the amount of stress and toxins and everything that we're dealing with, we are depleting a lot of our reserves,
Yeah.
and then you tack on a prescription like birth control or non-prescription in this particular case. And it's kind of stacking the deck.
Yeah.
It's more so than anything
Yeah.
else, and
Yeah.
that's what I think we just have to be mindful of, is just like, how much depletion are we experiencing just in a stress state,
Right.
just trying to get through our day in survival mode. And then, you add on the Opill and it just could just be a little extra layer of, of feeling depleted in terms of our body's not functioning well.
Yeah, especially if you're on other medications that are known to deplete. Like Metformin is a good one. Metformin is also known as glucophage. And I bring it up because women's health, commonly in PCOS, right? And so it's well known, metformin glucophage depletes B12 and other B vitamins. And then you layer the birth control like Opill or something combination on top of it, coupled with life, as you just said. And if nobody's bothered to check your B12 levels or any of your levels, then it's a real disservice to you, because B12 fatigue is a big one. Depression, mood is a big one. Neurologic issues are a big one. Lack of balance is a big one. There's a number of things that go along with losing B12. And so just knowing that little tidbit alone can be so helpful for somebody who might think, geez, I'm on both of those pills. I didn't even realize.
Well, and those are often very much combined. If you get a diagnosis for PCOS, that's that's the two scripts. Here you go.
That and Spiro, right? That and Spiro and Electone.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's kind of like so just something to think about. We've got so many women trying to heal polycystic ovarian syndrome and just doing what the doctors say that they need to do. It's gonna be really hard to, to get, a breadth of information about what are the implications or what are the side effects of taking a lot of these medications together as they're recommended together.
Yeah. And then thankfully there are some great sites. Talk to your pharmacist when you pick up the pill, because that is free, to have a little consult with your pharmacist and say, look, I'm on this, I'm going to pick up the Opill, or even if you're on a combination pill, or I am taking glucophage, what vitamins and nutrients is depleted. Do you have some sort of handout? Do you have something that can help me? Just ask. Thankfully, the information is out there. And I love that we're having this conversation, because once again, as you said in the beginning, we're not against this, but we sure want you educated for it if you're going to choose it.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the, I know you probably know about this technology as well. I had the founder or the inventor of it on the show, but it's Natural Cycles. Have you heard about? The FDA-approved birth control app. That is as effective as birth control. It's when with perfect use, it's 98%. With regular use, it's 93%, which is what's on most.
That's what the FDA says birth control is. Yeah.
And what I love about it is I've used it before. That this app, you can pair it with an Oura ring, but if you can't afford an Oura ring, then you just do do your basal temperature every single morning, and that information gets translated into the app. And within the first month, it's pretty much 98% effective with perfect use, 93% effective with regular, kind of loosey goosey use, I guess you could say. And there's no chemicals here. There's nothing being put into your body. It's not, it's literally an app, and it's been FDA approved here in the States. It is I forget what it's called in Europe. It was actually introduced to Europe, and I believe in like New Zealand and Australia first, and now it's here in the US. and it's called Natural Cycles. Again, it's an app, but the one thing you have to consistently do is every morning is track your basal temperature so that it knows when your ovulatory window is. And so
Right.
it can say with exact precision pretty much, when to have sex. Again, it's not going to protect you from STDs.
Mm-hmm.
This is an app. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
condom,
Right.
but it will, if you follow it, and you stay within your window, you're pretty much as close to using a combination pill without any of the side effects. So
Which
I
is
want
wonderful.
yeah,
That's
I,
amazing.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely amazing. And it'll help women understand their body better, especially because all the books say, well, you ovulate on day 14. And in fact, I think it was Nicole Jardim who did a post the other day about it's like this tiny percentage who actually do ovulate on day 14. Like it's way lower than anyone ever thought, but that's what gets taught in the books all the time. So I would have all these patients who were trying to get pregnant or trying to avoid pregnancy, thinking that day 14 was the magic day, when really that was day 12 for them. Yeah. Or day 18 or something. And they were completely, they were like, how am I pregnant? I didn't want to be. I'm like, well,
because that's not how it
your
works.
window, you hit it in the window and you didn't realize it. Yeah.
I mean, and that really begs the importance of tracking your cycle.
Yeah.
And if you have an app like that, what I love about this app as well is it is also over the counter. I'm just kidding. That's obviously over the counter.
It's accessible. It's accessible,
very
which is what we
accessible.
want. It's a nice option.
And it's cheaper than the pill too. So I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of women still don't know that that exists out there, that there is an app that tracks your temperature every single day and can nail it on the head when you are fertile and when you are not. I think that that information is so helpful, either because you're trying to get pregnant or you're trying to not get pregnant.
Right.
It goes one way or the other. And I really think it also really advocates for body literacy and really understanding your cycle and really learning more about you and body awareness around your cycle. And so I know there's a lot of great apps out there, but what I love about this, it just kind of combines all of it, and also ensures that you don't get pregnant if you're not trying to get pregnant.
And body literacy is something I wish that all of us were taught from a pretty young age. For a lot of families, it can be very embarrassing. For some families, they don't have a mother figure who can teach them about this, or it's very shameful, or it's just an awkward conversation to have, right? When I wish it was half the population are women.
Right? Can we just say that one more time? That 50%
right?
of the population are women?
Which means a whole lot of us are getting our period and have been, from puberty. So
yeah, and the 50%
if we could normalize,
bring life into this world.
Yeah. If we could normalize talking about our periods, tracking periods, body awareness, gosh, that just makes me excited because I'm like, I feel like we could just be so much more empowered and so much further along if we knew what was happening. There'd be a lot less doctor visits, right? There'd be a lot less practitioner, a lot less stress, a lot less thinking something was normal when in fact it was common but not normal, and we would know what to do because we've been trained at it from a young age. And so that's my wish. People listening to this, start teaching your girls at a young age about body awareness,
or even tap into. So I had Holly Griggs Spall on the show, and she has an app called Tina, and it's all about body literacy for girls as teenagers.
Love it.
And it is amazing. It's this incredible education that's super body positive and really educates, because you know how wonky it is for us when we're teenagers. It's almost like we have symptoms of PCOS at a very early age. And unfortunately, I don't know if you read the stat recently, but almost 30% of our teenagers have prediabetes.
Oh, gosh, no, I didn't know that.
And so there's probably obviously our periods are really wonky and they're inconsistent during our teenage years, and it can be really hard to understand what's going on with our bodies. But then also we have this uptick in insulin resistance and prediabetes that could be playing a role in our menstrual health as well. And so those are just some things that I think are really important to understand mood changes and mood swings. When I was growing up, I came from a Catholic family, and so for one, it was a sin. I mean, all things that women do. So it was this thing that you didn't talk about.
Right.
Then I had an evil stepmother who would literally wait and track and check the trash cans and see when I was going to start having a period. And then she would just bash me the entire time I had a period. So I hated I hated that part of me because it was just filled with so much shame
Mhm.
and filled with so much, like just shame and embarrassment, and it was just something that I learned to not love about myself. And it wasn't until way later in life that I realized that it was a superpower this whole time. And I was just beat up about it my whole life. If I ever like bled in my underwear, she would make me scrub them in front of her. Like
Oh my
that's
gosh.
how crazy she was. And so, I and not to say that anyone's having that experience, but I feel like there's been so many weird experiences that our generation had, and even our mom's generation had, around their period, and that it was just something we didn't talk about, or it was something we had a lot of shame around. I remember, when girls were starting to have periods when I was in 6th and 7th grade, boys would bully the girls who had them. And it was just so So
Yeah,
I'm really hoping that we do shift the conversation. And I do believe that a lot of that is changing
I
uh,
do too.
this generation.
I do too. And I see it on social media, for better or worse, social media, but I definitely think that awareness is there and the education is coming out. And that part makes me really happy, because that's a horrible traumatic experience you had to go through. And imagine if you didn't resolve or work through or recognize. Imagine if you weren't in the field that you were in. And so you continue to this day, and then you continue to pass down that generational trauma to, let's say, other females, other girls in your life, future children that are girls, whatever it is. And the cycle doesn't get broken. It just gets passed down instead.
Well, yeah, cheers to all the cycle breakers out there.
Yes.
Yes. A different conversation for a different day. I want to pivot a little bit in talking about birth control for women in our demographic, in our community,
Yes.
in perimenopause and even into menopause. Ooh,
Yeah.
it breaks my heart when I meet women that are in their like mid to late 50s that are still on the pill because I
Because
don't
there's
know.
no other, they don't have any other
They didn't
options.
have
They
an, and
weren't
they're
told.
or they were
Yes.
told that I've had so many women tell me like their doctor like was like, you have to stay on this.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
what?
I had patients who would say, I'm going to stay on the pill until I get through menopause, and then I will go off because I don't want to deal with menopause. And honestly, at the time it was 50-50. So 50% of them could sort of get through menopause, and then they would come off the pill and they would be done. But the other 50%, it was like this revenge from the body. Like just, it all came out. They had horrible periods and they'd been suppressing their own natural hormones for so long and yet they were transitioning to perimenopause and menopause at the same time. And so they were like, this is awful. What happened? I should never have stayed on the pill this long. I've been on it, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, depending. And this is awful. I'm like, I know. And there are amazing other options. I wish somebody would have told you about that. And actually, before we got started, I told you the story of I went to see my OBGYN, who at the time she was 46, 47. So I was probably turning 40 at the time. And we started talking about hormones because of what I do, and I'm into hormones. And she said, well, I'm on the birth control pill. And she was one of those women. She said, I'm just going to stay on the pill all the way through menopause. And I said, well, what made you decide to stay on the pill? Why aren't you on Prometrium or, bioidentical estradiol or whatever she needed,
Bioidentical
right?
testosterone or whatever she was,
Something, yeah.
whatever she was
And
needing.
she said, well, the pill's the only option I have. And I thought, oh, of course, in your world, that makes sense. As an OBGYN, she lives and breathes the birth control pill. And to her, it made sense to just go back on the birth control pill in her 40s to move her through into her 50s. And I'm not saying all OBGYNs are like this at all. Obviously, there are some who do understand by, prescribing HRT,
everyone I
right?
met.
But I feel like a large majority were she was just shocked. Like, there are other options. I thought the pill was it. And I thought, oh my gosh, you could even get them at the pharmacy. It's not even some crazy secret, dark room that we get them from. That's like prescription Prometrium, prescription estrogen patches. And like, we get them at your pharmacies.
CVS, baby, down the street.
Walgreens. Yeah.
Walgreens.
Like we can get
I picked up mine yesterday.
Yeah.
I have no shame in telling everybody right now that I'm on 200 milligrams of Prometrium right now.
Prometrium.
Yes. Because that's what I'm needing right now in my season. And one of the things I know you and I both agree on is that we do not, women, need to suffer needlessly. Yeah, especially, I think even the conversation of bioidentical hormones or even, HRT in general isn't even really a conversation until women are in menopause. And I'm like, but what about the hot mess 10 years that we're getting to there, that can feel just so disruptive and so crazy. The sleep, the brain fog, the massive mood swings, the crying 1 minute and raging the next. Like, what about that decade? Why don't we have something? And so I really want it. One of my big missions is to shift the conversation around, what about bioidentical hormones in perimenopause? Like, can we talk about this? No,
Can we talk about this?
as one of your tools, obviously.
Yes,
One of your tools,
absolutely. Yeah. What's funny is that I was at a conference. I was in a integrative medicine conference a couple months ago, and I met a doctor there who she sailed into menopause. She had no symptoms, no issues. One day her period ended, and she was not in denial. Like, we joked about that. She said, no, I'm a very aware person. I wasn't, I'm not pretending this. And her sister was the same way. So genetically, I said, can we bottle up what you have and sell it? You'll make a fortune.
You got just a plethora of neurotransmitters and amazing liver, and your gut microbiome is killing it. And obviously insulin sensitivity.
But that she was not.
Okay.
That she was not. But she didn't have hot flashes or night sweats, or she just felt like, compared to her friends and her colleagues that she talked with, she said, I just didn't have any of those symptoms. And one day my period ended. And it ended. She didn't have the skip a few months, then come every 2 weeks. She's like, I didn't have any of that.
She didn't stand in the waiting room for a year and a half. Nice.
None. So in all of my years, she was probably the second person who had ever told me that.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was yesterday. I can't remember. Oh, Mindy Pelz. Mindy Pelz did a post. Yes, Dr. Mindy Pelz did a post yesterday on menopause. And one person commented, it's not a disease. I've never had any menopausal symptoms. I wish you would stop telling people that it's awful and bad things are coming, because I never had bad symptoms. I cruised through menopause. So I think you need to promote that more. And the amount of comments that blew up underneath, who were like, it's horrendous for me. Nobody told me. Nobody warned me. I'm having all these symptoms. I mean, it was just like all these women just rallied and said, no, unfortunately, good for you. But the large majority of us really struggle. And I was like, yes, this is why you're out there educating. Mindy's out there educating. I'm out there educating, because we don't get taught this. This is not something you learn in health class at school, right? In health class, we learn like the intro stuff, puberty stuff.
No, how to make a baby. We learned about sperm.
Right. The P goes in the V, and then you make a baby. So don't do that. Right. Like, that's what we learned. Like, and then we have no other classes. We didn't get a class in our 30s. We didn't get, nobody gave us a class. And so many women hit their 40s and go, what is happening? Because I've changed nothing. And I'm like, oh girl, everything is happening. Yeah. All your hormones, all of them, everything from your estrogen, progesterone, to your testosterone, your cortisol, to your insulin, to your glucose, to your thyroid, to your brain neurotransmitters, to your gut neurotransmitters, everything is changing because of this reverse puberty. You're reversing out into menopause. And I am here to say I'm grateful and glad for the people who have zero symptoms and sail into menopause. They are the way minority. If they can elaborate on what their trick is, just let us know. That'd be great.
Or maybe they don't realize.
Right,
I've had so many women I'm looking at, I'm like, girl,
yeah, this is very menopause.
Maybe you didn't have those symptoms, but I'm seeing symptoms.
Right.
You just don't identify those symptoms as menopause.
That's a really good point. So insulin sensitivity is what you mentioned. So the other day, I found this article that just gave validity to the fact that so many women gain weight in menopause, and it's a biological thing partly because of our estradiol declining. And this whole domino effect occurs of where we store weight from, where our weight shifts to. Our fat cells, called adipose cells, our adipose cells change. How we make them changes. With the loss of estradiol in menopause, the decline changes our microbiome completely. So we think our gut health is good, it's good. And then we hit menopause, lose estradiol, and the microbiome's like, well, what the heck? And it completely changes for the worse, unfortunately. Our brain, our heart, our skin, our bones, this loss of estradiol. Now, there is a lot of foundational work that you talked about all the time on your podcast, and it's super important. But on top of that, since it's the topic of conversation today, if you're a candidate, hormone replacement therapy of some sort, and there's a lot of type of hormones out there,
Mhm.
is probably going to do a body good.
Yeah.
It's,
I just
and
wanna yeah.
yeah,
I wanna
go
speak
ahead.
into this real quick. One, your
Yeah.
body is changing without your permission. Sorry, ladies. That is
Mm,
what's happening. When I had I had an episode this year before the brain issue, and I was gonna start lifting heavy weights. And I
mhm.
hired Gabrielle's personal trainer here in Encinitas.
Nice.
And he decimated me. But before I went into that, I ran all my labs. I ran hormones, everything, all of it,
Mhm.
insulin, fasting insulin, everything, microbiome testing. I did all the functional labs, and everything was a superb, optimal going in. Um,
Yeah.
and like my mom suffered from pretty severe PMDD,
Mhm.
especially in perimenopause. I mean, I watched her; she would lock herself up in the house because she just couldn't even go out to see people. She had so much rage.
Mm,
She would just stay in the house for like 3 days before her period because that's when it was the worst. And I remember really, helping her through that process and it getting better. But always just knowing that that was there. And, knowing all my, again, the foundational pieces that I've been working so hard and so diligently on,
mhm.
again, what slipped for me were my hormones. And I have felt a shift and change this year in 2023, like a full 180.
Yeah.
And that's with the foundation. That's people would I would argue that a lot of my metabolic markers are in optimal range across the board, but my hormones had tanked
Yeah.
because I had a baby later in life. I breastfed him longer than most, and I'm okay with that. But I knew that the sacrifice of that was that most likely my hormones were going to tank by the time I was on the other side, and it was going to have mostly a profound impact on my mood and my mental agility, my mental resilience, and those were the two areas that really shifted for me. That around 5 to 7 days prior to my period, right now, everything feels insurmountable.
Mm,
And so I'm now on testosterone and prometrium, and we're going to be we're running labs again in a couple of weeks, and we're just going to see, like, is estrogen is it necessary at this time? And so I don't have any symptoms of estrogen dominance and all that, but it's even when you've got so many things dialed,
mhm.
those hormones are so game changing,
Yeah.
and then so many of us don't have a lot of that dialed.
That's the truth. I was talking, so I'm 46. One of my best friends is 47, and we have been off and on playing with continuous glucose monitors because, we have access to it and we're trying different things and playing with it so we know what to tell our patients, of course. And so last year, the last 2 years, my fasting glucose is great. What I eat, how I exercise, I had pretty good what I call metabolic control or metabolic flexibility that I would say. And this year, so I'm 46 this year that we're recording this, I had a continuous glucose monitor in, and I was pre-diabetic most of the time. And I thought,
Whew.
stupid sensor, like it's
It's
got to be the
broken. It's
sensor,
got to
right?
be
It's
broken.
broken.
And some of them are
Some of
broken.
them are, but she
Yeah,
had the
on
same
accident.
thing. She had the same thing. So she used the same company, the same type. And screenshots, Carrie, I'm above 100. I'm fasting. I'm above 100. I'm in the 100. I'm pre-diabetic. And she's 47. She said nothing's changed. And she's pretty foundationally solid. I mean, none of us are perfect, but for what we know, what we do, pretty foundationally solid. And both of us went, stupid hormones.
Yeah.
Our stupid hormones. We just have to work.
So
I
much
mean, I hate
harder.
to say it, harder.
Yeah.
Cynthia Thurlow and I have talked about this, and with her fasting, intermittent fasting, and we were talking about hormones for the same reason, because she said this similar something happened to her, like realizing like stupid hormones and metabolic flexibility, and she sees it in her clients and patients as well.
Well, and then also I just want to just the caveat, which kind of makes it a little bit scarier, is that, when the medical system starts to flag us for prediabetes or for type 2 diabetes, and then it's thought that we're going to be at greater risk for cardiovascular disease, stroke, and
Yeah.
cardiac arrest. What we're finding now is that women happen to have a greater risk earlier with lower levels of fasting blood glucose. So, you know, when they're flagging us at 125, 126, really we're starting to see even levels around 109, you know, 108 are putting us at that risk of what 126 is. And so we haven't skewed the numbers to really, really kind of nail when women become at greater risk for some of these more chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, dementia, and type 2 diabetes. And so we need to really shift the new guidelines or the new standards, particularly for women, especially as we enter menopause.
I 100% agree. And unfortunately, I think because this is just speculation, because they don't necessarily know how to handle that. You know, changing guidelines is always a really big deal. And if they lower the glucose down to, let's say, hey, anything over 100 or 110 compared to 125, 126, I mean, that's you and I agree it needs to happen. Like, we need to bite that bullet, but think of all the women that are in that category and getting told you're normal, you're fine, you're normal, you're not, you're fine, you're pre-diabetic. So just watch what you eat. You're not diabetic yet. Once you cross into diabetic, then we'll deal with it. Meanwhile,
all the other things that they think.
Meanwhile, just as you said, they're at the high risk for brain, you know, degeneration, heart, cardiometabolic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, why wouldn't we want to prevent this as soon as we find it? Why are we waiting till we fall off the cliff at a glucose of 126? And insulin is very similar. There's a study that I quote a lot, because when you get a fasting insulin, the reference range usually says anything under 25 is acceptable.
Insane.
And in functional medicine world, we often say anything under 5. So 3, 4, or 5, right, is okay. So I find this study and it says, hey, if you have high levels of fasting insulin, in this, it's a people study. If you have high levels of fasting insulin, you are at a much higher risk for cardiometabolic syndrome. So I'm like, cool, what's considered high fasting insulin? And it was like over 7.9. And I was like, whoa, that's way different than 25. So anything over 7.9 is considered high fasting insulin. Moderate was between like 4.9 and 7.9. When I thought, well, this is why we often say
under 5.
Under 5 is ideal for insulin. Yes, I understand 25 is the reference range, but I don't want anyone to develop cardiometabolic disease. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of humans.
And women.
Why am I waiting until you hit 26 on the insulin blood draw, to do something about it? I don't want you to get cardiometabolic disease.
Yeah. And we need to be looking at fasting insulin.
Yeah.
You know, it's insulin resistance. That's the troublemaker here. And we're waiting until we're just looking at hemoglobin A1C, which is a compilation of those 3 months, or we're looking at your fasting blood glucose, and often a little too late.
Yeah.
And we just recently shifted the guidelines from, 110 down to 100 for prediabetes. And so they're going to be like, well, we just changed those, and so I don't see them changing them anytime soon, but we have to be having this conversation, and we need to be looking at a fasting insulin. That's what's going to really show what's going on. And I believe that it's around, by 45 years old, around 88% of women have some level of insulin resistance.
Yeah,
which makes sense, unfortunately.
And it can be sneaky. I just had a case yesterday of a woman with PCOS, and the fasting glucose, she's on glucophage, so she's on metformin, and her fasting glucose was in the 80s. And so her, doctor kept saying everything's fine, you're fine, doing fine, which is true. Her fasting glucose in the 80s, that's great. But her insulin was in the double digits. And I was like,
that's not great.
That's not great. Like, this is a problem.
It's a major problem. It's a major problem with things like metformin as well, like that we're seeing, we're in even having insulin recommended to you as a type 2 diabetic. Yeah, we're controlling blood glucose, but we are flooding the system with insulin. And so there are bigger detrimental effects, the cardiometabolic effects of having, a hyperinsulinemia in the system that just complicates things. It's very complicated.
For all the perimenopausal women listening, I get it. We kind of sound doom and gloom. We don't mean it that way.
Well, we're going to talk about what to do.
Like, what we mean is this is really important, and your primary care or GP or OBGYN might blow this off a little bit, or might say you're in the range, so you're fine, or this is common, it's menopause, just ride through it. And we're to say, one, we need you to be extra aware because we don't want you to develop cardiometabolic or neurodegenerative like dementia and Alzheimer's, which these are risks for. And two, there's a lot of hope. Like there's just because you maybe went and got your blood drawn and you're like, crap, I'm in my 40s. Just like they said, my blood sugar is 100 and my insulin's, 10 or 17 or whatever it is. We're not telling you that there's nothing you can do because you're menopausal. There's the foundations and considering hormones, but we do need you to be aware that it is probably coming. Winter is coming.
It's real. It's
yeah.
It's 91% of us by the time we're 50. It is
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Let's just say, I mean, unless you are the lucky 9% or the 8%, it's almost all of us.
Yeah.
And it has to do with, it's a convergence of a lot of things. One, hormones declining. So our hormone protectors are leaving us and are, in that transition over to menopause. And then, we live a modern life. Yeah. Women are busier than ever. They've got more on their plate than ever. We are more stressed than ever. We are flooded with ultra processed foods. We're not moving the way that we should. And we're on our phones right before bedtime. I mean, like there's a lot of things that we can take ownership of. And we do have the ability to reverse our biological age, to increase our health span. But we've got to be mindful about it. We have to be intentional about it. I will say that every day I think about what I'm doing, how I'm moving, what I'm eating, what's going to be my future brain, what's going to be my future microbiome, what's going to be my future, who's making more mitochondria for me. That's what I want to know. Who's a part of the mitochondria factory in my body? Those are the, and so I think when we can be mindful, and the sooner that we can do that, like at, mid to late 30s is where we really get to harness some of this. And as we start to, gradually build a lifestyle, I was, interviewing Dr. Stacy Sims, and she's like, this is a lifestyle. You are going to lift heavy weights at 80. Yeah. It's not about burning yourself out in your 40s because you start to see these changes. It's about, gradually adopting these lifestyle shifts and changes that are going to carry you through decades. Yeah. Decades. And that's really what I want to spend a little bit of time on as well. But note that Carrie and I are both saying that on the table are bioidentical hormones if you are a candidate for them. And a lot of us are. And you really deserve to be on them if you can be on them and you have symptomology. Yeah,
absolutely. And if your practitioner maybe isn't a fan of them or doesn't agree or is not that educated in them, we are giving you full permission to go find a second opinion. It's okay to add to your healthcare team. If you really like your general practitioner for things like colds, flus, your annual physical, great, keep them.
Labs. You get your labs taken care of.
Run your labs through them. Great. But if hormones is not what they know, totally cool to be like, I'm gonna find somebody who gets hormones.
Yeah. I'm not buying milk at the hardware store.
Yeah, that is the truth.
I'm not buying milk at all, but I'm not buying almond milk at the hardware store. So, that's the point is that, you go to an endocrinologist, even still, you're again, it's going to be a lot of medications. And, so you want to make sure that you're finding the type of doctor that's going to give you, the path that you're looking for. And I get that functional medicine can be very expensive. I understand. And that's why I'm hoping that episodes like this, interviews like this really open the door for what is possible. And then you can really dial in who you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, some of those estrogens, progesterone, that, Prometrium is an example. It's prescription that you can pick up at your CVS, Walgreens, your typical pharmacy. It's not something that has to be specialty compounded. You can go that route, but there are absolutely bioidentical hormones available. So if you do have a doctor or practitioner that's somewhat savvy and it's like, let's try the estrogen patch, which is bioidentical. Let's try Prometrium with you. And they're willing to help and learn and work with you. Go for it. That's a great start. Get help.
Carrie, I would love for you to share a little bit about, what you're doing right now at your age, you put the CGM on and you were just like, oh, hell no, that CGM was
Oh,
not what I was in. I'm taking it that it probably wasn't broken. And so when you get numbers like that, when you're waking up with fasting, I honestly, I would freak out if I saw a fasting blood sugar of 100. I think mine are usually if I wake up with at a fasting blood sugar at 80, I'm like, oh, what did I do last night? Did I not go to bed early? Did I eat dinner a little too late? Like, that's how detailed I've become. I'm just like, I know me.
hmm.
We have dinner before 6, and then we go on a walk as a family.
Yep.
And then I go to bed at 10. There's a 4-hour gap between my last meal and sleep. And let me tell you, my Aura ring and my Whoop strap, they will all tell me what's up, you know? And so I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of what are you, and I get that this is your own personal experience, your own N of one, but also we're pulling from research, you're pulling from patient experiences as well. So if you'd be willing to share a little bit about what you're doing, and then just some general recommendations that I can shake my head about so that they're hearing it from somebody else as well.
For me, most definitely a big one that I adhere to really pretty well is I have a strong wind down routine, and that's wind with a D, not wind with an
Yeah, she
E.
didn't say wine with an E.
Did not say
No.
wine with an E. Well, I do love a good glass of wine. I have very much realized in the last several years, alcohol does not love me, right? And I remember when I was in practice and quite young, a lot younger, all my women in their 40s would go, you wait, you will not be able to drink alcohol when you hit perimenopause. And I was like, whatever.
Girl, please. I am your doctor.
I can do this. And they were right.
I switched my liver.
Even the occasional glass of wine, nope, not worth it. And so I have to do a lot of prep work before and after to do that. And so wind down. So I'm definitely that person who's either, blue light blocking glasses, or I switch the background on my phone. I have, the shortcut on my phone is I click the side button 3 times and the background flips to like an orangey red. Just look it up, Google it. You can how to make that a shortcut.
Yeah.
Right. Super easy to do.
And it's a one-time thing that can change everything for you.
And it carries over to all your phones.
Yes.
So if you get a new phone or upgrade or whatever, that shortcut stays in the cloud and then comes on your new phone. It's great. You don't have to learn it with all the new phones.
I love those one-time fixes, like getting all your lights fixed in your bedroom so that the harsh light isn't hitting you, like these are one-time fixes. You don't have to do it every single day.
Which is great. Yes. So, and I drink Organic India's Tulsi tea, which is one of my absolute favorites. So again, like I just have a rhythm. I know, well, I can start. So we have dinner, which is usually early, like you. And then we have a dog who's very active. So we call it nighttime walk. So we have dinner. Nice. And then by 7, the dog is like, hello, it's nighttime walk time. So we go on a 15-20 minute walk through our neighborhood. Rain, snow, sleet, hail, ice, it doesn't matter. The dog goes on a walk. It's that kind of dog.
Yeah.
So I get my walking in, and then and then we make our Tulsi tea and usually wind down for the night. Yes, for sure. Occasionally, last night I was on my computer. I had to be, but I was mindful of that. I sleep with a sleep mask. Most nights, sometimes it falls off, but I have this gigantic sleep mask that I absolutely love to sleep in darkness. And then in the morning when I get up, the dog prefers that I feed him. So I will get up, feed him, we have a back slider door, open the back slider door, enjoy some sunlight, especially if it's spring, summer, fall, get that full spectrum light in, and go from there. So I'm pretty diligent, like in the start of my day and the end of my day, I'm pretty regimented in, and because the middle of the day can go to chaos, right? But at least I'm locked in on the start and the end.
Those are what matter.
That's what's super helpful. I'm a big journaler, so so stress reduction, I'm being very mindful of how am I handling stress, what's going through my body, shadow work, movement to get the stress out, essential oils. However I'm managing stress, I'm finding as I get into my mid 40s that I am more reactive, less graceful as I used to be, breathing and practicing on, breathing exercises. And I'm not saying I do these things every single day, but I will pick what I need in the moment and use it. Exercise, I was definitely not doing weight-bearing exercise enough. So I've switched. And now I do pretty 4 or 5 days a week. I do weight in combination with like something Pilates-like, and going back and forth, and then walking a lot because I have a high maintenance dog who likes to go on a lot of walks. And so
do you like being outside too, Carrie? Do you like it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And I'm in the Pacific Northwest where it rains, 10
But it's
months of the year.
beautiful.
I just put on the gear and take the dog for a walk. The dog does not mind rain, and we just go, and I get my steps in.
I love it.
So,
Can we be best friends?
yes, yes. My gosh, absolutely. But
I love all of that.
but have you found, I found I've had to double down on these things.
Oh,
Whereas before
yeah.
I would do them pretty regularly, but I'm just more aware now. Like, I am not handling stress like I used to. I am not sleeping like I used to. Like, oh my gosh, my blood sugars like I used to. And so now I'm finding, just as Stacey Sims says, it's a much more hardcore lifestyle than you probably anticipated. Like, it's for the rest of my decades. My family lives a long time. 3 out of my 4 grandparents lived until the late 80s, mid 90s. I'm in my 40s and perimenopause. Like, I know I've got probably a good 40, 50 more years on me. And so I want to be thriving and all the things. I do take progesterone like you. Hit or miss sometimes with DHEA, depending on labs, if I need it or not. Not to be TMI, but funny story is I went to get a PAP and I asked my OBGYN, I was like, how do things look down there?
What's going on?
I feel like they're good still. And she's like, she's like, your pieces and parts look like they have a lot of estrogen. You're still good. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
God.
Oh, she's like, everything's pink and healthy. And, we have a lot, they're called, the little waves on the inside are called rugae. She's like, you have a lot of rugae. And I was like, oh, I know I won't have those forever, but I'm glad to have them now.
Just enjoy while you got it.
Enjoy it while I still got it. So, and then I obviously, and I've been doing this a while, the toxins, right? Endocrine disrupting toxins, I'm very, very mindful of as best as I can. So fragrance, plastics, chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, my skincare, house cleaning, even our mattress. Like, we've really done all the things. But as I tell people, I have been doing this since 1999. So I'm way further along in my book series than somebody who's listening to this for the first time and looking around at all the beautiful candles that they have out on display and realizing, oh man,
that's a migraine starter for me.
I should
there.
probably get rid of those. I know, it's 100%. And so just even things like that, I've been, even more extra mindful of. And so just all that, it's just that foundational work. And then with the blood sugar now, I'm more mindful of carbs, sugar. Dark chocolate is my absolute addiction. And so just plain dark chocolate, not cookies, not brownies, just plain dark chocolate. 88% is what I eat. Whoever makes it, whoever gets it, I'll eat it.
I know Hugh doesn't make 88%, but Evolve does.
There's several. Endangered does. Hugh does. Hugh makes I think they're an 80. So there's a couple, that make. But carbs, just be mindful of rice and quinoa, and I'm gluten-free, so gluten-free toast or whatever I'm doing. I do know as I'm making this transition, I have to be super mindful and lift heavy things.
Yeah, I love it. And just really quickly, any supplementation that you feel is a game changer for you specifically? Are you taking any like vitamin D, making sure that's good to go, or levels are looking great?
The 2 things I take pretty religiously for me, one is sulforaphane. One is sulforaphane for estrogen detoxification. I do not have great genetics when it comes to estrogen receptor, estrogen detoxification. So I have been mindful of that for many, many years. And then 2 is magnesium. Magnesium. I can tell immediately if I've forgotten my nighttime magnesium. I could literally do Epsom salt baths and take magnesium and use topical oil. And for some reason, it's not enough. I don't know genetically. I don't know if I burn through magnesium or I can't absorb it like the average person, but I feel so much better when I take magnesium. So I make sure never to skip it. And obviously I do love D. I do love my omegas. I do love my B complex, but my sulforaphane and my magnesium are the 2 things I'd grab if I could only grab 2 things.
And can you tell me dosage wise, how much are you taking? 600 milligrams? You're taking close to a gram of magnesium, or where do you
honestly land? So I'm lazy. I let the universe decide. I just tap the bottle over and however many falls out, that's what I take. So sometimes it's, 300, 400, and sometimes it's definitely close to a gram. So yeah.
I kick it up to a gram, definitely towards the end of my luteal phase.
And I have spray. I will use magnesium oil spray, and I'll do that like bottoms of the feet, calves. I get headaches as well, menstrual headaches. So I make sure to rub it on my upper traps and my neck, especially in the luteal phase, to help relax. So I'll do that in combination with oral magglycinate or something like that. Yeah.
I think what I'm walking away, and I think everyone as they're listening, is how intentional you are.
Yeah.
And, and how, every day. And here's the thing, it's built into your life. You are still high octane mom. You are running, you're a mini empire. Like there's a lot of other hats that you are wearing all the time. And your daily lifestyle and how you take care of your body is integrated in to your life.
And I want to just add to that piece specifically. I've been doing it so long, it's not a stressor for me. And I'm also very forgiving that if I skip something other than magnesium, I'm also forgiving as well. If I don't get that heavy lift in today, I don't beat myself up. It doesn't stress me out. I know listening to this, some of the first timers, the newbies are going to be like, oh, that's ridiculous. I can never add that into my routine. That's too much. And I get it. But remember, I've been working on this since 1999 when I figured out naturopathic integrative functional medicine. So I'm way further along in my book series. You are maybe at chapter 1, and you're just going to start with one thing, and then you're going to build. And eventually it's going to become things you just can't live without. It's things you crave and love. You just like live for your nighttime tea, or you're obsessed with your sleep mask, or, you get super excited for your nighttime walks, or whatever it is, your breathing exercises, your hormones, like whatever it is, you will crave it, as opposed to kind of maybe freak out right now.
Mm. And that kind of leads me to the last question, because I know we've been talking for so long and we can go on for so long, much longer. But, someone listening to this and they are thinking, whoa, you guys, it's overwhelming. Like, girl, I didn't even share my routine. Like, oh,
I know. I mean,
goodness.
Flip that table.
And so you're listening and you're thinking, like, I can't even, like, I'm just trying to get through my day. Like I'm in just handling the things I need to handle for my family. If you had to start all over again, Carrie, and you started having symptoms, and you're walking through perimenopause into menopause, and you had to start with one thing besides magnesium, what
Okay.
would that one thing be? Like, what would be the thing that you're like, this is the biggest, like, this is where the juice is worth the squeeze?
For me personally, it's quality sleep. That's the one thing. Quality sleep seems to fix everything for everybody. There's so much research on it. And I don't mean people who are like, yeah, I get 8 hours of sleep,
No,
but then
quality.
they do wear a Whoop or an Aura, or they get a sleep study done and turns out they have sleep apnea, or they're up a lot and don't realize it, or movement, or whatever it is that's like not quite quality. Our brain detoxifies at night. We heal and repair at night.
Hormones are released at night.
Hormones are released at night. Our blood sugar, insulin improves because when we have quality sleep. If you have crappy sleep, you're set up for insulin resistance the next day because of melatonin. I mean, it just, so many things can be added to the what does sleep fix. That's the one thing I would focus on. And I have absolutely noticed as I've gotten into my 40s, despite what I do, I still can have bad nights of sleep. I mean, it just, hormone, you need estrogen and progesterone and a whole lot of other things to have quality sleep. Progesterone's calming. Estrogen helps you with the phases of your sleep. And if it's all over the board or depleted, then sleep gets affected.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we just need to hammer that so hard, how important it is to have, deep, restful, quality sleep.
Yes.
And there's a lot that goes into it. You can't just run into bed. I think most of us know that by now.
I hope so, but there are a lot of
so.
burn the candle at both end listeners, I bet.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. Okay, where would you love us to plug in? Is there anything you want us to make sure that we know about you before we take off?
Yes, Instagram at dr.carriejones, website drcarriejones.com.
Perfect. All right.